Welcome to Attainable and Sustainable. I am your host, Devora Goldberg. In this podcast, I guide my listeners through a deeper look into the parallel paradigm of Hollywood love and the Jewish perspective of healthy love and relationships, something which is truly attainable and sustainable for all. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Attainable and Sustainable Podcast, episode number 5, titled, Is Sleep Divorce Even a Thing? This podcast is all about shining the unique spark beyond the typical and traditional Hollywood love. I'm really excited about today's topic as we delve even deeper into the paradigm of Hollywood culture of love and relationships. We're all familiar with Hollywood. We watch their movies, we follow their shows, and really become quite obsessed with the daily lives of the celebrities as well. I mean, who's not talking about Kanye West these days? It's in all our conversations. Whether we agree with him or not, we are talking about him because it's plastered all over media and we all know about it. And we all have an opinion about it. And many times, the media gives us paparazzi lenses into the lives of many celebrities, not only Kanye, not only the Kardashians, lots of them. And we learn about their relationships and their family dynamics as well. So we hear it, we see it, we obsess over it. And because these celebrities are in the limelight, we follow them. And perhaps we emulate them as well, thinking that their model of love is what will create our very own Hollywood dream type of marriage and love. But is that truly what they're exemplifying? Are those dream-like relationships even lasting? And how do the majority of these relationships end? And even, may I add, when we emulate these relationships, how do our relationships look like if we think that the paradigm is all about what Hollywood and the media is showing us? So how does all this relate to today's topic? Someone recently sent me an article written by Christina Wyman from Insider.com. Now, what was her title? The title of her article said, "My husband and I have been sleeping in separate beds for 9 years. And quite frankly, I couldn't do it any other way." Christina describes in the article that when she first dated her husband, they had a long-distance relationship for many years. Now, whenever they were together over that period of time, they shared a bed together, and it didn't seem to bother her. Clearly, it didn't bother him either, and it was a non-issue. Once they eventually moved in together, and eventually they married as well, she found that sleeping in the same bed as her husband just didn't work. His sleeping patterns were different from hers, besides for the fact that he'd fall asleep in lightning speed, which annoys many women, while she tossed and turned in bed just to find the right position. And then perhaps she would be jerked awake by him tugging at the blanket in the middle of his sleep. So it just wasn't working out, as she was getting more frustrated and sleep deprived as time went on. So she decided to move to the next available bed in their home, in the guest room. Christina shares in her article that she knew she was not the only woman making that decision. Many couples apparently sleep in different beds, and yes, even in different rooms sometimes. There seemed to be some kind of normalcy around it in many homes, but in her home, it just felt awkward. It just felt like something was wrong. And how Christina described it in her own words was, "While I take comfort in knowing that many other couples sleep separately, I'd always keep our bedroom arrangement under wraps." pun intended, because I was embarrassed. I thought other people would judge my marriage's strength and health, as I'm aware that in choosing to sleep in the guest room, I had actually initiated a sleep divorce. I understand, Christina. It took courage to put your personal life out there on the line and be transparent with your audience. And yet, even though you may be considered a trailblazer in the modern world, yet in the history of the world, your message was preceded by a more holy value, a more virtuous system, and that is the Jewish way of marriage and relationships. Now, Judaism actually has a response to your article, Christina. And this is what it would say. Firstly, your personal intimate life with your spouse, including which beds you sleep in or which rooms you sleep in, is actually no one else's business. No one else's business. Not your social media, not your neighbor next door, or not your girlfriend that you're chatting with over the phone. Not their business. Judaism teaches us that because this topic is personal, it's not only personal, it's also sacred. It's holy. It's an intimate experience which takes place between husband and wife. Judaism teaches us that marriage itself is a holy edifice, is a holy union, a holy connection. So it's not just what we see, man and woman being attracted to each other, getting married, swapping vows, swapping rings, and that's it. They're going to live happily ever after. No, in the Jewish realm of a marriage, you've actually entered a holy connection, a holy connection with each other and with God. So we're not going to start cheapening this connection by chatting about it with others. There's something deeper that we have to appreciate about it. And Judaism tells us that because it's so holy and because it's held to the highest regard and the highest esteem, we don't flaunt it, we don't discuss it with others, and we aren't supposed to care about others' opinion as to what goes on in a couple's bedroom. It's just not a topic of conversation. And in many Jewish circles, Christina, you actually won't see women sitting down to a coffee date just to discuss their sex life. Yes, I do understand other people do it, but it's just not seen in many Jewish circles. Jewish women and men in these circles do not want to cheapen this intimate connection with their spouses. And if an issue arises within their intimate life, and this could happen to anyone, and absolutely it does happen to many people, what they do is they direct their problem to a specialist or a therapist for guidance. And that's it. Now, the second way that Judaism would respond to Christina's article is in line with what I have mentioned in my previous episodes. The foundation of this answer, and essentially the premise of my podcast as a whole, is that the modern culture of love and relationships and the Jewish perspective of love and relationships are both aligned. They both broadcast the same message. The only difference is the timing. How fascinating. Two very different cultures actually share the same message, but the timing of it can actually make all the difference. Now, what do I mean by timing? In this case, the concept of a sleep divorce is really broadcasting the message out that when the couple had had enough, when it's not working out for them, it's time to separate into their own space, their own beds. And that's the key word over here, their own. Right? Because while Hollywood says that it's a problem to move into your own space, Judaism, on the other hand, encourages it. Encourages the couple to use two beds and to incorporate a pattern of sleeping together and sleeping apart as a foundation for their marriage. Now, I want to be clear. Judaism doesn't tell us to put two beds in the master suite, right? It's not written black and white in the Torah, but it's encouraged, part of a value system of how we look at marriage and relationship and love. And it's all incorporated within the message. And soon we're going to understand why. But before I get into that, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into this concept of two beds versus one. In the modern world, it's expected and normal for couples to sleep in the same bed, right? It's not wrong. There's no harm done. But what happens when one bed is not enough? Not enough? Why would one bed not be enough? What could possibly go wrong? Well, maybe sleeping patterns. Maybe one of the spouses snores. Maybe there's just not enough space for both. Maybe they want to stretch out in the middle of the night and there's just not enough space. And maybe let's bring it down to the basic. Perhaps one of them wants some personal space. They don't want to be touched. They don't want to be in the same vicinity as another human being while they're sleeping. Let's face it, all of these possibilities can happen and do happen more often than not. A friend of mine once confided in me that her husband was away on a business trip and she was having the best sleep of her life because she had the whole bed to herself, something that hasn't happened for many, many years. Another friend once casually mentioned to me, and by the way, I don't ask people their personal stories, they just speak it. I don't know why. But another friend once casually mentioned to me that she was asked to babysit her friend's pet over at their house, her friend's house, over the weekend. And she was telling me she's so excited. She's looking forward to having some alone time without her husband and her family. And of course, she's also looking forward to getting a good night's sleep because she was going to have the bed all to herself. Now, is there any harm in these two stories that I just told? Were these women wrong in expressing their deep feelings that they simply wanted personal space? I don't think so. We're not wired to always want to cuddle or even lay next to our spouse. It's not supposed to be a constant. Taking a break pretty much from anything and everything is good every once in a while. It feels good, it feels right, and when you get back to the thing that you have taken a break from, you're excited to have it again. Maybe it's chocolate. Maybe it's going back on vacation, your favorite vacation place that you've gone to. You've had a break for a couple of months and now you're back at it and it's exciting. But somehow when it comes to beds in the master bedroom, beds in a marriage, society has made it into something constant. This is part of what society calls the sex culture. Now, the paradigm of the sex culture is that sex is a constant. It's always available, always in the same bed. And of course, it's always a topic of conversation at couples' night out. For some reason, it has become everyone's business. Those are the headlines that stand out so boldly, that grabs everyone's attention, and people just oodle and ooze over the most recent outcomes of someone's personal marriage, personal stories that the media wants to let us know about. right? What do they have on those big, bold magazines? So-and-so's life is a sex life is on the brinks. He's moved out to the guest room, or she's taken over the master suite. Really? Why is that my business? Why is that your business? There's a reason why we have a saying that goes, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and we can apply that to so many different realms, but it happens in your bedroom, it stays in your bedroom, and it's not a topic of conversation, such as what Judaism teaches us. But that's not the case in Hollywood, media, paparazzi, and modern day culture. What we learn from these headlines is that Hollywood paparazzi is really ingraining in our psyche that when the second bed is used, it's because there are problems. There are problems in the marriage. There are problems in the relationship. And yet, while Hollywood and the media consider two beds to be an issue, they consider it to be a sleep divorce and perhaps an entryway to a final divorce, as all the chit-chat goes on. At the same time, Judaism looks at the two beds in the master suite and holds it to the highest regard. In fact, this is the exact prescription that Judaism gives for a healthy and long-lasting relationship. You're going shopping before your wedding? Double it up. And I'm not talking about the pots and pans for dairy and meat. Yeah, that too. At the top of our shopping list, we should have 2 beds, 2 sets of linen, 2 blankets, and as many pillows as your heart desires. And here's the prescription. Every month, when the woman menstruates, you are to sleep in separate beds. And why is that? Well, the Torah explains that when a woman menstruates, she's at a level of spiritual impurity. She's not dirty, she's impure. And the concept of impurity is not something that we can appreciate or experience with our 5 senses. But it's a level of impurity that the Torah explains that when this is happening during the month, we as Jews are commanded to refrain from having sexual intimacy with our spouses. So when does the couple resume intimacy then? If they're taking a break, how do we know that this break is over? Great question. Once her period has ended and a subsequent 7 days have passed with no show of blood or staining, and at the culmination of the final 7th day, the woman immerses in the mikveh, she then maintains her state of purity once again. And then she returns from the mikveh, and they may sleep together once again, sharing the same space, the same bed, a space which is actually not just physically close, but emotionally close and spiritually close as well. And when this happens, they're excited to sleep together once again. Why? Where does the excitement come from? It comes from the break beforehand, a break which created that longing between them both to be reunited physically once again. You see, it's not enough for Judaism to tell us during menstruation there's no sexual intimacy, because it's easy to say and certainly not easy to do. Because you're living with your lover in the same home. You're living to your ultimate attraction within the same 4 walls. So it's easy to say, don't be sexually active. And then you say, how is that even humanly possible? So we set up guidelines. When the woman's period begins, each couple separates into their own beds. At this time, you enjoy your personal space to the woman who is menstruating and perhaps not feeling her best, give yourself some alone time. Treat yourself to something. Go get a massage, get your nails done, take a walk on the beach, and of course, sleep in your own bed. Enjoy that personal space that you're claiming for yourself. Rejuvenate. And after a few days of this personal space, you're going to find yourself wanting to be close again to your spouse, and him wanting to be close to her as well. Yet the Torah says to wait. Wait until your period is ended. I know your period just started 4 days ago and you've taken a little break and you feel like you want to cuddle once again. But the Torah says wait. Wait until you've counted down the days to immerse in the mikveh. And here's the instruction to the couple. While you're waiting and sleeping in your own beds, make a point of focusing on the emotional side of the relationship. Listen to each other. Offer support and a listening ear. Yes, none of these things involve touch, but it's an integral part of the relationship just the same. I was having a conversation with a colleague recently, and she casually asked me in the middle of the conversation, is it true that Jews sleep with a wooden barrier in their beds between husband and wife? No. Judaism is so much more progressive than that. So much more progressive than that. It's not a focus on the restriction. It's a focus on reclaiming your space in order to feel that tug in your heart to want each other so strongly. Kind of like that fiery love that people love talking about. That explosive fiery love that everyone loves to write and read about in articles. And they ask, how do you achieve it? How can we maintain this fire in our marriages after 1 year of being married? After 5 years? After 10 years? After 35 years? What do we do to maintain that love? The same love that they both had when he first proposed to her. We don't have to look far. It's all been laid out for us. It's all clear. It's simple. It's a basic strategy. And you know what? It works. It is truly something that we can all attain and sustain for ourselves, for our relationships, for our spouses, and for our marriage. Thank you so much for listening. In the next episode, the spotlight is on Whoopi Goldberg as we delve into her stance on abortion rights and how Judaism actually has her back. Tune in 2 weeks' time for the full episode. As always, I love your feedback. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Your Right to Shine, where the conversation continues. I also wanted to announce that I started booking speaking engagements, something I am super excited about. To find out more about my keynote speaking topics and available dates, DM me on Instagram at Your Right to Shine. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. If you are loving the Attainable and Sustainable podcast, I would love if you could do 2 things for me before continuing your day. Number 1, subscribe to this podcast to ensure that you never miss an episode. And number 2, please rate and leave your review so that others like yourself will be able to find this podcast and enjoy it as well. And finally, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know your feedback, your comments, your questions, your aha moments, or even something that you need further clarity on. See you at the next episode.